Hey, everybody, before we start the show, I wanted to let you know that this episode is brought to you by Elderwood Academy. Elderwood Academy are the makers of many fine, handcrafted, amazing gaming products that you can have at your table. They are just the most incredible wood and leather products made to carry around your gaming gear that are customizable. Oh man, they are just amazing, and they look so good. They're made to look like different things. One of my personal favorites are the scroll rolling trays. So these are rolling trays that are portable that you can collapse, roll up like a scroll, take with you, and then bada bing, bada boom, you are ready to roll in just a matter of seconds with a sweet rolling tray. It also looks great when it's set up to roll. So go check it out at elderwoodacademy.com/don't split. That's elderwoodacademy.com/don't split. Tell them DSPN sent you. This is Tabletop Babble. I'm James Introcaso. Today on the show, I am chatting with the amazing game designer and author, Matthew D. Corley. He currently has a Kickstarter for The Devil's City. Horror fiction and 5e gaming conjoined. We talk a lot about the marriage of gaming and fiction here. And I'm not just talking about the fiction that happens at your games. I'm talking about like reading a dope fiction novel. It is a really fun chat with just one of the best human beings in the world. So if you like what you hear, head on over to Kickstarter, check out The Devil's City. There's also a link in the show notes to this Kickstarter, so you can check it out there. But if not, just enjoy the sweet tones of Matthew D. Corley and I talking about game design and writing some amazing fiction. All right, everybody. Now I'm here with one of the best human beings on the planet, maybe? I think so. Matthew Corley, welcome back to Tabletop Babble.
You made me almost spit out my wine. Okay. And yes, I am having a glass of wine.
That's right.
I think we all should be having a few cocktails if that's what you're if that's what you like in the evenings.
Yeah, exactly. We're recording this at the end of March, where we've all been quarantined, or you're going to work, whatever the case may be. And so it's good to be able to have you here, Matt, to talk with you. For people who don't know, who are you and what do you do in the world of tabletop role-playing games?
Yeah, my name is Matt Corley. I am a game designer / game writer. I am also a publisher. The name of my company is Saturday Morning Scenarios. I first kind of came out of the woodwork thanks to Wolfgang Bauer and Cobalt Press with Tales of the Margrave that I was a lead developer on. Mm-hmm. And then Sandy Peterson kind of took me under his wing, and I have been writing nonstop for Sandy for most of the last 18 months or so. Sandy keeps me busy. So if I'm not writing for myself and my products and my IPs, I'm generally writing for Sandy, occasionally for Wolfgang as well.
It's great to have you here because you write a lot. You also write for yourself, right? I think that's a fair thing to say. People may know you because you've had a very popular product on Drive-Thru RPG lately. Talk to me about that.
Yes. So MT Black and I were working together for Harper's Tale, which was a book that I crowdfunded last year for my daughter Harper. And him and I kind of connected then, and he had seen a book, my first book that I published myself, which was Lampslight Sanitarium, which you and I talked about last year, or maybe year before last now. Gosh.
It's a great show. People should go listen to it for sure.
Yeah, it was so much fun, which was the Gothic Victorian Dungeons & Dragons setting, a 5e setting. It was fully compatible, or is fully compatible with 5e. And MT knew I kind of liked that stuff. He knew I'd worked with Sandy a lot. He knew that I like mythos-y, horror-y type stuff. So MT and I were just talking, and him and I both kind of independently came up with a 5th edition compatible, D&D compatible game that is much more like investigational horror or even just straight investigations. And again, we kind of both came out of it separately. We both have our own had slightly different perspectives on it. And it was a really, really great partnership. And MT and I put together Whispers in the Dark quick set rules. It's about 80 pages. I think at this exact minute, it's on sale for about $4.99 or $5. Generally, it's between 9 and 7. And what it is again, it's D&D rules. And I always have a hard time figuring this out. So if anybody has any suggestions, please let me know. Like, what do I really call this? Because it's not Dungeons and Dragons. There are no dungeons and there are no dragons. Well, there might be dungeons actually, but there are no dragons. It's not heroic fantasy. However, it uses that skeleton and those rule set, that D20 rule set that 5e has, that Mike Merles and Chris Perkins, Rob Schwab, all those folks built a really, really good engine, and one that does heroic fantasy fantastically well. And in my opinion, one that you can pretty easily bolt on stuff to it to make it do slightly different stuff. I would say that, if you grab the DMG and you want to play a horror game that's not Strahd or not Ravenloft, it's going to be pretty tough. It's still heroic fantasy, it's gothic fantasy, but if you want to do something kind of investigationally or something where your players, their PCs may die, you're going to need some changes. And so that's kind of what MT and I did. And we did a lot of really neat things. Probably the biggest were, one of the things that I did was the Sanity and Madness rules that I wrote for Lamplight. Gosh, what is it, like 30 pages? It's actually not complicated, even though when I say 30 pages, like, holy crap, how can you take 30 pages of sanity rules? It's actually super straightforward, and I've gotten a lot of great feedback on the kind of the simplicity of it. The pages there's a lot of examples, and there's tables that are really nice and evocative and give you great examples so that, when you have some sort of issue, there's kind of a mechanical version, a crunchy thing that happens, and then there's also a narrative thing that the player can role play. And so it's a lot of tables. So again, it takes up a lot of space in one case, but on the other hand, I think I cut it down to 3,500 words once, which really, actually, in D&D terms, like if it was in the DMG, I could probably get it in 6 pages if I really wanted to.
Wow, that's fun. That's cool.
It is. Thank you.
Yeah,
we've had a lot of success. We might hit gold with Whispers by the end of March. It'll be close. We hit copper, silver, and whatever those first 3 are really fast. That bump from Electrum to gold's pretty big, though. I mean, you literally have to double your sales. So we'll get there. And again, we have had fantastic reviews. I hesitate to say this because I feel like somebody's going to see it, hear it, and be like, okay, well, I'm going to mess with you now. But I haven't gotten anything but 5-star reviews.
Wow.
Yeah. And that includes like reviewers that I send copies to. It has been so incredibly well received. It is something that, MT and I are both very, very proud of, very, very happy with. Something him and I are both going to be expanding on individually and collaboratively later. So it's kind of something we both own.
Mm-hmm.
So MT is going to be kind of doing his thing with it while I kind of do my thing with it. And then occasionally we'll kind of meet back up and do something again as well.
That's really fun too, because then you kind of get double the content from great creators.
Yes. There's actually he didn't even ask me to say this, and I didn't even think about it, but he actually has, I think it's called the Companions or the Investigator's Companion is coming to Drive-Thru. I've seen it. Mm-hmm. It's not on there yet, but by the time this comes out, it might be. And if not, keep a lookout for it. So MT actually will have the first PDF expansion for Whispers popping out in early April.
Man, that guy just pumps out the content. It is crazy.
Busy. He is. Really he stays busy. He does a great job getting stuff out.
He's great. His writing is amazing and evocative, and it's always full of cool ideas. I am in a Slack channel with him where I can see some other things he's working on, and it's always like, it's a project might be due months from now, and MT is the first one by a long shot to be like, here's my submission, that kind of thing. So he is
he did the same thing. So I try to do that too. Actually, so there's a lot of things him and I are a lot alike on. It was a fun collaboration. We both learned a lot too. But same thing happened with Harper's Tale. I think he wrote the 8th adventure, and we were mostly going in order. He had his in after Jeff finished his. So Jeff was second.
Mm-hmm.
I was first, then Jeff, then MT. So we went 1, 2, 8, and then all the other ones kind of trickled in random places. So yeah, he is not messing around. He gets focused and he gets stuff done. It's pretty awesome.
And so, speaking of Whispers in the Dark, we should have a chat about the Devil City. What is this? Tell me more.
It's a city of the devils, but not red ones, and they're not lawful evil. And you might know it better as Chicago, which is actually what it is.
Yeah, 25 or 6-4, Chicago. Hit me up. There we go. That's That's a little classic rock joke for all you classic rock fans out there. Sorry, go ahead.
So the Devil City is actually a horror novella that I wrote with Sarah Tantlinger. So the Devil City is the actual novella. Sarah is a Bram Stoker award-winning author. For non-horror folks, that's the award. That's the one you get for being the best horror in the year. And lucky enough, she won it for a book of poetry inspired by H.H. Holmes. And H.H. Holmes is known as America's first serial killer, and he is known and often in some circles as the Devil of the White City or Devil in the White City, which is the nickname that Chicago had during the World's Fair because there was so much marble everywhere from the World's Exposition Fairgrounds. Everything was bright white marble. And so the city was at that point called the White City, which is actually even the name of one of the book of a great historic fiction book by, I think, Eric Krauss is right, but that might be right. The Devil in the White City. And so the Devil City is named after H.H. Holmes. And what we are going over in it, Sarah and I kind of take turns writing chapters. And each chapter actually starts with a diary entry written by Holmes. And you know what? This is gonna you I know will appreciate this, and some of the other folks might. So, do you remember the old R.A. Salvatore Dritz Jordan books where they started with a diary entry of Dritz's?
Yes, yeah, which we now know is him speaking his thoughts aloud to the sunrise. I think has been that is what's actually those are supposed to be. It's crazy. It's crazy.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, it's fun. It's fun, right?
It is. So I loved those diary entries. And so that was one of the things I asked Sarah if we could do. And so I wrote the diary entries for all the chapters. And again, the diary entry is like 100 words to basically set up Holmes's mind, a state of mind for that victim, that person. And so you meet the person, you get to know them a little bit. You get to follow them as they are stalked, and then as they are hunted and captured by H.H. Holmes.
Oh.
And the novella ends, the final chapter is he comes back to all 5 victims and he does some things to them. And it kind of stops with them all in the basement. That's kind of it in a nutshell. And so what it's going to be, and again, I'll kind of get back to it, but so the book itself, it's going to be a hardcover novella, super heavy, thick paper. I have some amazing art from some artists that maybe RPG folks don't know, but most horror folks do. Folks like Sam Araya, which actually Sam does a lot of stuff. So the art that I have from the different artists, and actually I've done this before. When I choose artists for my books, I actually go outside of RPGs in most cases. Harper's Tale, I stayed within because I had that look that I really wanted. But for the horror books, I want to bring people in that you haven't seen. The image in front of you right now is actually from one of the short stories I wrote, and that is written, or that drawing is from Francois Vaillancourt, who's an amazing artist up in Montreal. And Francois has done illustrated books for Stephen King.
Wow, that's awesome.
Like he's not messing around. It's not like some random guy. And Francois is amazing. I mean, you can see this, and if you get the book, you'll be able to see it too. And so that's kind of what it is. The novella is actually illustrated as well. The picture that I'm showing now it's actually a watercolor from Daniel Serra. And Daniel he's a great artist from Spain, in Madrid. He actually did one of the pieces in The Whispers in the Dark. And Daniel is basically the guy for covers right now. And so really, again, for me, it was super important to grab artists that are incredibly talented in the field of horror and the field of mythos and even the RPGs, and bring that in front of people that may not have seen it before. I don't think the horror people have seen Sam. array. And that's a shame because Sam's incredibly talented. Or Dan, I don't think anybody's seen Dan Hawksworth, one of my new artists, or Ben Powell, who's another one of my new artists. And then for the RPG folks, I'm sure they haven't seen Francois or Danielle Sarah. And Francois and Danielle are phenomenal folks and great artists. And again, I think it's really nice to get those different perspectives out there and to show them. And so that's super important to me. And again, so that's kind of what the Devil's City was a chance for me to bring in artists and a writer that I really like, work with them and create a really neat book. And so the reason why there are 5 chapters in that book is because I didn't want to make 6 pre-gens. I wanted to make 5 pre-gens. And so, a party. So again, with Whispers, we used pre-gens. It's kind of a Call of Cthulhu-y, Delta Green. A lot of systems actually use pre-gens. D&D doesn't very often at all. But systems in which case, or systems when the characters are a little more disposable, they tend to make pre-gens so the players don't have to spend hours and hours doing that. And so the novel or the novella introduces the pre-gens and gives you the best backstory you could ever hope for. I mean, so basically, these are your backstories. Your backstory is written by a Bram Stoker award-winning author.
Right.
And that other guy. But when you start the book itself, so the scenarios within the book, there's going to be a campaign, and the campaign is actually going to start as one of the victims, and you wake up in the basement. So the first scene of the mini campaign in Horror in the Windy City, which is the RPG, is actually the ending of the novella. And so for me, that was the big thing. The really neat thing for me was to tie the fiction and the game together in a way that we just don't. I don't know that we've ever done it really. When we had great D&D and great kind of tabletop fiction, for lack of a better term. Probably Margaret Weiss was probably one of the best. Ari Salvatore is great. There are definitely great writers out there, but I'm trying to remember of an instance where anybody really tried to tie it in and make it an integral part of the actual game. Not just setting material, but an actual, basically a scenario or a module.
Hey everyone, we're going to take a quick break and then back to the babble.
Hey, it's Mike Shea of Sly Flourish and author of The Lazy Dungeon Master and Sly Flourish's Fantastic Locations. My show, The DM's Deep Dive on the Don't Split the Podcast Network, features a one-on-one discussion with guests like Sean Merwin, Enrique Bertrand, Teos Abadia, and more. Once a month, we dive deep into a single D&D topic and answer your burning DM questions. Watch us live on Twitch, on YouTube, or on our podcast on the Don't Split the Podcast Network. Let's dive deep.
Let's get back to the babble. This is one of the fascinating things, right? Is this intersection of like a narrative fiction book and an RPG game. I love this stuff, right? And I love the Dracula dossier, and Time Watch put out a book of the Book of Years, right? And so this idea that we have this intersection where narrative fiction, written by an author that you read for pleasure, also intersects with our RPGs and our role play is really, really interesting.
So for me, it kind of comes with 2 different places. So for the horror people out there that I know that I've talked to, the authors, a lot of them are gamers, and they played D&D back when they were kids, and they may not anymore. And so what I want to do is have these folks get a chance to read a book and then take it into the next step. So, playing a video, it's almost like a video game, or going into a movie or a choose your own adventure or something like that. Those are products that are so much fun, and we all have a great time. And the amount of, you get so, I don't know if in depth is the right word, but you definitely get invested in the process because you start to know the characters better. And so that's one of the great things here with Whispers. The system is actually a little simpler, and D&D 5e is a very easy game to play. I've always said that, and I think you have too, is especially if your DM knows how to play well, the players just show up with dice, and that's about it. You can do all of it pretty much on the fly. Whispers is even simpler than that because we don't have so many of those different class rules and class abilities. Spells are more or less gone, at least from like a kind of a combat perspective. You don't just do them on the fly. So it's a much simpler game where you are focusing on the story. And so I wanted the book fans to get into the book in a way that they haven't before by playing it. And for the D&D fans, or I guess the RPG fans, the folks that want to play a game like Cthulhu, Call of Cthulhu, or Delta Green, or SLA, or all those fantastic games that I absolutely love, but they don't have a chance to learn it. So now they have something that's simple to learn because they already know it, and they have all this great depth and this background, and they can sit there and go in there. And I'm not going to be sitting there staring at the TV like I'm watching screen, telling them, no, don't get underneath the garage door or whatever it happens to be, because I am Paul, which is one of the characters, or I am Rosine, or I can be Bajarin or somebody else. I am that character, and I can make sure he or she or they do what they need to do to get out of that story, and to see where it goes, which I think is such a neat thing. Again, it's almost like it's it's kind of taking it back from video games, where we used to play video games all the time to pull ourselves into a story or a movie or a book. Well, now instead of doing the video game, we're doing it around the table with our friends, or I guess in this case around Discord and Zoom and Skype. But it's personal interaction again. But with a level of interaction again, kind of almost like being in that book, which I don't know. I think it's just fun. I think it's really neat. Everybody's kind of been excited about it. I cannot wait to see folks do it and see how they like it.
It's great to see a joining of fiction and RPG like this. Where did you get the idea for it? Like, what struck you to give you the idea of, I want to write something in this setting that I created, but I want to make it fiction?
Right. So it's this is the planner in me, the pharmacist in me. I know that as a freelancer, and honestly, like if I'm working my real job in any kind of job, you have to have multiple income streams. So this is going to be very boring for some folks. But the more ways that you have to bring money in, the more likely you are to not be as affected by ups and downs. You're also more likely to be able to kind of be self-sufficient. And that's kind of just a life lesson in general. If you're always depending on one single thing and that thing goes away or has a problem, you're kind of out of luck, and that's kind of a life lesson. Again, that's kind of a life lesson. So I was talking to a friend of mine, Matt Young, who Matt, and Chris Tallman also, and Chris and Matt are huge D&D nerds. Chris is on Nerd Poker. Matt is all over the place. They're also professional screenwriters in Hollywood, and Chris is actually even on Nickelodeon playing a superhero, which is my daughter's love. It's so funny. But we were talking about it, and Matt and I especially said, you know what, there's a lot of similarities between screenwriting and RPG writing and adventure writing. And then I also have always loved just writing in general. And so I wanted to, you and I talked about this a long time ago, I wanted to do something a little bit differently. And for me, the medium isn't quite as important as the story. There's different perspectives, and I think we can learn a lot. The medium is a novel, or the medium is a screenplay, or even a video game, or a D&D game, or a Call of Cthulhu game, or whatever. But you can play that same story or tell that same story in different ways with each medium, and working them together is great. And so what I wanted to do is I really wanted to give it a shot and see how I could do, and see if I could do it, to be perfectly honest, and to challenge myself at that, because I thought it was a great idea. I told Sarah, her and I talked about the Devil's City, and I told her flat out, it was one of the first things that I said, is if I am not up to your meeting your standards, you need to tell me to back off. And I hopefully, that's actually a conversation I have with anybody that I work with. Like, if I am slowing you down, you need to tell me to get out of the way, and I will happily do it and watch you just go crazy. But you know what? Sarah never told me to stop. She was great and encouraging, and we built off each other a lot. She has a different perspective, of course. I mean, she's an MFA. She's a professional, writer, and she teaches. She's a teacher of literature. So it was great to get that perspective. And so again, it really was trying to do a lot of different mediums to see, one, to keep myself challenged and busy. And you know what? I would love to be able to write a novel, write a game, and write a movie. I think that's amazing. I think that would be the most fun thing in the world. And the ADD in me, I get so bored so easy sometimes that I have to go from, I was telling somebody else, like I have to go from mechanics to plot to room descriptions to admin to something else. Like I kind of have to get moving in circles to get anything done. And that's really how I did it. Or it really was, that's what it really was.
So when is the movie coming? When does that happen?
I don't know. So Matt, Chris, I hope you guys are both. I've teased them and said, just let me know if you want to screenwrite. I'm happy to do it. I think Whispers in the Dark. I think the scenario in Whispers, the Crow Man. Matt and I are actually writing a sequel to that. I think that could actually be a really fun alienist type TV show or movie or something like that. However, I'm not moving from the Midwest, so I think my chances are pretty slim.
Well, you never know. You never know.
I know we're all remote now. So Devils in the City, or The Devil's City, is the novella. The RPG setting book, though, is Horror in the Windy City.
Okay.
And I had them actually calling them the same thing probably until like a month ago. And I'm like, okay, this is really confusing. So we have to get different covers. And we also need to give them a new name. And so the Chris and Matt, who I've already talked about, are helping me. So yeah, Matt Young, Chris Tallman. So I guess I should mention that people helping too. So Chris and Matt are doing a lot. They've been with me since the very beginning. Two amazingly talented young ladies joined me recently, Kat Evans and Celeste Conowich. And
yes.
Kat and Celeste also came in to help me at the end with Harper's Tale. And once they finished the task there, I pulled them immediately over to Horror at the Windy City. And so the five of us are just churning out work. And we're each taking little sections of, 1,000 words or so, and just kind of churning it out, reading it, and then, send it to me. I kind of do a little bit of editing potentially, and then we just do the next one. We have a long line. We have an assembly line of work to do, because the book is going to be covering Chicago from 1850 to 1899. And in a lot of ways, this is a historical fiction world building RPG book. It is absolutely written for 5e and specifically for Whispers in the Dark. However, if you want to play a campaign that has any kind of investigative or horror elements, it will have a lot for you. It will have a lot of rules. I mean, I got about 20,000 words so far, and I'm not sure that I have a single like D&D specific term in there yet. It's just really good. Again, I keep calling it historical fiction because I feel like that's what it is. I have some of the best writers out there. I mean, can't speak highly enough of their talent and the efforts that they've been through. And we really are. We are focusing a lot on making Chicago a setting for you to run an entire campaign in. Oh my gosh, I can't believe it. I almost forgot. And Grant Ellis. Actually, I just added Grant about 2 weeks ago.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Love Grant. He's amazing.
Oh, isn't Grant awesome? He's so good.
Mm-hmm.
He's my fave. But yeah, so we are doing a timeline of the city of 50 years and going over individual events that happened in those 50 years. We're doing geography. We're doing neighborhoods. We're doing businesses. Grant's actually writing the section on organized crime. I can't wait to see what he does with that. Secret societies, public clubs. I mean, it is going to be really, really neat. I think it's going to be great. I'm super excited about it. And then when we have the world building done, there's going to be a GM section, which I will write with some mechanics. And then everybody is also going to be, I've asked everybody to pitch a scenario. So I'm going to write the one that starts with the novella ends. I think Celeste is actually going to write the companion to that. And so, again, not everybody wants to be a victim waking up in a serial killer's basement. I totally get that. It may not be your thing, and that's okay. And so Celeste is going to take it from the perspective of someone that missed the victim and is coming to save them. And so The murder castle,
Oh.
which is where all this happened. So H.H. Holmes had a murder castle, the World's Fair Hotel, 3 stories, 1 basement, a couple hundred rooms. This happened. This existed in real life. This happened. This is not this. We didn't have to make much stuff up to make this game really neat. And so, we have it mapped up fully. There's about 100 rooms. Um, and so Celeste again is going to kind of take the role of like, maybe some Pinkertons or family members or cops or just anybody that gets pulled into exploring the murder castle to try to save the victims at the bottom. And so you'll get to play through the murder castle 2 different ways. One from the bottom out as a escaped victim, and the other one as a hero. Take on a heroic role where you do get to save the day for, hopefully anyway. Hopefully you'll save the day. And that's really neat. And then, I think Chris is going to do one about the great conflagration of 1871, the Chicago fire. I'm not sure what Matt or Kat are going to do. I think Kat, I don't know. I think somebody's going to take the wharves because, it's the lake. It's Lake Michigan. It's cold. It's gross. It's an inland sea. There's got to be something nasty down there, I think, waiting to come up. Again, kind of going in circles. One of the things also that I'm super excited about that I almost sent to you to say we should just talk about this is actually the alignment system I wrote. And it's very different. And to begin with, I want to say I actually wrote this alignment system for Infinity Black, the dice makers, for a game that they're going to have coming out later on. And Heath and David were incredibly nice and actually let me have back my what I wrote to go ahead and use it in kind of a select portion, in kind of a certain way. And so with D&D is very, I don't know, I wouldn't say it's black and white, but it's definitely heroic, right? You this is right, this is wrong. In most cases, let's just let's fight it out and figure it out. And this is a very different system. And so what I did is, and then I'm super happy with this, is we actually wrote out a alignment system that uses 3 pillars, and or 3 axes is probably best. And you start with one axis. You could add a second or even a third at any point while you're playing, but you don't have to. And you can even move them around. And so the axes are like kind of a good versus evil, order versus chaos, and selfish versus selfless. And the order that they're in is how important they are. Because you could be somebody that's very ordered, very selfless, but also very evil. You can kind of do them in any which way, and you may be something that's just a tiny bit evil, but very ordered and very selfless, and so maybe nobody notices. And so within each one of those, though, then you kind of pick a word. And, again, I think I pulled a lot of this, or I did pull a lot of this from different psychology texts that I've read and researched. And, if you're good and evil, you pick basically a word. Like, are you benevolent? Are you ambivalent? Or are you malevolent? Which one's your best? And I picked very evocative words so that you can literally say, I'm a malevolent, pragmatic utilitarian. And you kind of have an idea what you are and can play from there. So that's I'm super excited about that. And I feel like actually, honestly, I wish I had thought of this before and said, let's talk about this, because I think this is super fun and something a lot of folks I hope really like.
I love what you are doing, and I'm sure other people do too. If they want to check out the Kickstarter, where should they go and what should they do?
So the Kickstarter starts on March 31st. Best place to find it right now, because it's not live, it probably will be live, I guess, when this goes, is actually just to go to Twitter. Find me. I am at Matthew D. Corley, and the Kickstarter will be in my bio. It's going to be the Devil City 5e is the name of the Kickstarter product. And again, it's a combination of 2 books. You do not have to get them together. You can get them apart. If you end up getting any of the middle tiers and above, you get an e-copy of the novella anyway. So you don't have to go without that. And again, it's drive-through RPG, so we're going to be doing with print on demand, so that our international folks don't have to deal with all the hassles of that. There will be one physical reward for US backers only, which actually will be the novella, because I am going to print it on very nice paper, very laminate. It's going to be a very, very high quality book for US backers. So I'm actually going to print those, ship them to my house, and then mail them out from there. I may regret that, but I'm going to give it a shot. What I really, really want is I really want all the folks out there that play Dungeons and Dragons that want to play a different type of game like Call of Cthulhu and again, I love that game. I have written for Mike. I work for Sandy. I love that game, but not everybody has time to learn it. And I truly believe, and the feedback I've gotten from almost all of the playtesters that have played both, is that this feels like Call of Cthulhu. And I honestly couldn't think of a bigger compliment to tell somebody that I made a game that stands well and stands next to what Sandy and Mike and Lynn and all of them made. And again, that's what I want. I want those 1 million critters that watched Crystal Palace to look and think, I can play a game just like that tomorrow. I don't have to learn Call of Cthulhu. I don't have to get a new group. We can play one-shots when we want to. And if we really love it, there will be campaigns and whatnot and all that stuff going, because this is the first campaign or the first Kickstarter this year. There will be another Kickstarter at the end of the year or by the end of the year.
Well, there you go. But I think it would be great for people to check it out. We should mention that it is 78 pages. So you do still have to read 78 pages, right?
No, of course not. If you know how to play D&D, so that I'm glad you said that. So if you,
I was setting you up for this response.
I'm going to knock this one out the park. So if you buy Whispers in the Dark, or even if you buy Horror in the Windy City, or hey, you can buy both. I wouldn't be unhappy. There are going to be pre-gens. Whispers in the Dark has second level pre-gens, and Horror in the Windy City has fifth level pre-gens. And the pre-gens give you everything you need to play immediately. If you know how to play Dungeons and Dragons, you can take that piece of paper, hand the book to your DM, and you're good. You are done. The DM will need to learn a few things for the sanity mechanics. There is a one-page cheat sheet. And plus, the way I write, I actually try to make all of my games very, very user-friendly. I will literally say, yes, you need to make sanity check here, or whatever. I try to anticipate what they need to do. So I have had our playtester, we had 70 people playtest Whispers. They all loved it. They all had great feedback, and they all did say how easy it was to pick up. If you know how to play D&D, you know how to play Whispers already. And again, the only difference is the character creation, which is simpler. And I did that anyway. So I gave you a pre-gen so you could play, and then should you choose, you can make your own character for the next time.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, everybody should go follow Matt and check out the Kickstarter. Matt, thank you so much for joining me today on Tabletop Babble. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. Always a pleasure.
Ah, what a great, great show with my friend Matthew D. Corley. You know, people, you can support Tabletop Babble on Patreon if you've got the dollars to throw our way. It's patreon.com/Intricasso. That's patreon.com/Intricasso. Go check it out there for all the amazing rewards. And also, super duper duper thank you to everybody who has already been contributing. You make this show possible. And hey, maybe you want to help us out in a different way. You can do it for free. All it'll cost you is a minute of your time if you head on over to iTunes and leave us a 5-star review. If you're already listening to us in Apple Podcasts, guess what? You can just swipe on over in your app and just click us 5 stars. It'll take you like 5 seconds. But if you leave us a review and 5 stars, I'll read it out loud. You can make me say anything you want, like Average Joe 37, that's AVG Joe 37, who left a review entitled "Great Guy, Great Show." Thank you so much, Joe. The text of this review reads, James is one of the most genuine people in the TTRPG community, and his love and admiration of creation and collaboration shines through with every word. A wonderful view of the rest of the TTRPG world for someone like me who hyperfixes on D&D. And since I can make you say anything, whoa, Mr. Inchwo Casso. There you go. Boom. Thank you so much for this review, Average Joe 37. You are above average in my mind and my heart and brain too. So think about that. All right, people, I just wanted to let you know one other thing. Tabletop Babble has an editor. In fact, it's had an editor for a while now, and I think it's high time we left Mr. Nate Pausenga some credit. Nate, thank you so much for being our editor. Nate is also a lifelong friend and a fan of gaming, and I am excited that we can finally announce him as part of this podcast. So, Nate, I love you, buddy. And hey, if you want to know more about me, I'm at James Intricasso on Twitter, and you can find more at worldbuilderblog.com. That's the blog where I blog about all kinds of stuff, not just building worlds anymore. So go check it out over there. Tabletop Babble is a show on the Don't Split the Podcast Network. Thanks to Rudy Basso for founding it with me. Our theme music, which you're listening to right now, was provided by Battle Bards. And don't forget, stay inside. Play lots of games.
Leave behind the safety of the Humblewood and travel down the Tangrip coast to the Bay of Palouche, home to both the Kingdom of Den and the Serpent Domain. But neither hold the true power of the Bay, for that lies in the sea itself and the pirate lords that call her tides their own. The dread pirate Captain Bluebeak, Tiberius Fang, Kin the Bladeless, and Gabrielle LaFleur, the self-proclaimed pirate queen. Each one vying for power over the very tides themselves. But do any of them really have what it takes to hold up the legacy of the briny bulldog? Tune in each week to find out if our little crew has what it takes to stand up to the pirates of the blood-soaked waters. Dark Fortunes is available every Monday on iTunes, Spotify, and Google Play. Set sail for high seas adventure.